Welcome along to the podcast. Today, my guest is Nikki Canale.
That's me. Yay.
Nikki, what got you started playing music?
What got me started in music was 100% my father and my grandmother. Mostly my father.
Okay.
Yeah. So my dad, grew up in Middleborough, Massachusetts, and he played, well, he was a mechanic, but he also had band. So
Okay.
he had a cover band back in Boston, and he played around Boston probably about the same time that, say, like Aerosmith and all of them were sort of up and coming, and they weren't famous yet, you know?
So like 70s.
Yeah, 70s. So
It's almost when the band Boston would have been...
yes, exactly. They would have been forming at the same time.
Wow.
So my dad's band wasn't an original band. They did covers. But my dad is like an amazing entertainer.
Oh, wow.
He just gets an audience. You know, he's just one of those people. And he still to this day is playing. He's 76. Sorry if I got that wrong, Dad. and he's still out there jamming jam.
I hope I am when I'm that age too.
It's awesome, and everybody loves him, and he still sounds amazing. Like,
Yeah.
you can't deny it. It's like, wow, he sounds really good. You'd think an older guy, oh, that's sweet, but no, he's doing it, man.
I think it's one of those things.
Yep.
Use it or you lose it.
Oh, so yeah, so I digressed a little bit, but yeah, so my dad always played and whatnot. My grandmother was a singer. She actually, it starts back with her, really. She was singing when she was little, and when she was around 14 or 15, the record label came to her house.
Wow.
And they wanted her to join their label. And that's what they did back then, right? They went to your house and they were like, oh, come and sing in the can and get some money, whatever. And but her mother said, no, she's too young.
Wow.
And never let her go. And I feel like that moment was my grandmother's missing moment. She had 5 boys instead. My grandmother was a huge inspiration. And then my dad, of course, huge. So from the time I could walk, talk, whatever, there's always been a guitar in the house. He's not like a guitar player per se. He's like kind of like me, like a campfire singer. You can play enough to get you by to sing along with, but not like somebody shredding leads and all that.
Yeah.
But I grew up with my dad just having these amazing parties where he sang and played for everybody, and everyone was always around. And I remember, I think from probably 3 or 4 years old, in this little house that we used to live in Kossuth, Maine, when the population is about 200 people.
Wow.
Now my dad, so he started in Massachusetts, but he ended up getting a divorce, and he's a huge hunter. He loves nature and hunting. So he moved. He's like, screw this. I'm out of Massachusetts, and he came up to Maine and he built a hunting cabin, basically a house. And then after he met my mom, that's where we all lived. So they had me
lived
by
in a hunting
mistake,
cabin.
and they had me by mistake, and there we were. And my mom already had my brother, who was 2 at the time from a previous marriage, and then we sort of just Brady Bunched it, and then it ended up in this little hunting cabin. It was like a loft where all the bedrooms were sort of up top, but no walls. And I remember looking down over the loft, down into the living room, with my dad like sitting on his little tube amp, playing his guitar, singing, and all the people, family and friends, whatever, just dancing and having the best time when I was supposed to be sleeping, but I'm just looking down. And that's probably what sparked it
So
for
music
me.
was a very social thing.
Yeah. Every weekend. It was just, seemed to be anyway. It probably wasn't every weekend, but in my imagination it was.
Oh, wow.
So that's kind of the inspiration that started it all. And as the years, went on, I got a little bit more inspired to try to learn how to play guitar. And about 8 years old, I started, and then I gave it up because it hurt too much, my fingers. And I was like, no. And then at 12, I picked it back up. I said, Dad, okay, I'm ready for you to teach me again. So he did. And then it was like I became his opening act. For the parties, our little house parties. And it's really funny because my whole family associates me with the song What's Up by Four Non Blondes.
Ah.
Because when I learned how to play, that song was massive, and I always sang and played that song around the campfire house parties. And so everyone associates that. So that was my big moment. I'd open up for my dad, play my couple songs, and then he would take over and finish the night out. And from there, it's just always been something I've chased, I guess. So at 19 is when I finally got my first band.
And this still in Maine?
Yes, this was all in Maine.
All in
Yep.
Maine.
And amongst the pine trees and the bears and the deer and all that good stuff. Hunting and fishing. We didn't live in the little small town for long. I was about 6 when we moved out of Kossuth. And then we moved to Lincoln, which had a little bit bigger population, about 3,000, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually got to go to a school that had a classroom for just my grade, as opposed to when I was in Kossuth, because the kindergarten sat around one table, and then the same teacher taught us as she taught first grade and second grade, which were all in the same room.
Yeah.
So pretty trippy, yeah.
Yeah.
So small. But yeah, so I'm a real small town girl. That's just a small town girl.
Yeah.
That's it. And so yeah, we moved to Lincoln, and yeah, that's my dad still was doing his mechanic stuff and just playing and having his house parties, but there was always the music, you know, always that.
Just a short interruption. Please hit the subscribe button. It's a massive help to me. I'm trying to grow the channel, and there's a lot of work goes into putting these podcasts together, and any help that you can give me in doing that is much appreciated. Thanks. Hope you enjoy the podcast.
So at 19, you put your first band together.
I joined a band.
You joined a band with guys, girls?
It was all guys except for one girl that was a bass player.
Ah.
So the bass player and the drummer were married. And
all right.
man, they were solid. So good. And Roger and Pam. And man, Roger, I always think of him because he's just one of the smoothest drummers, but really good rock drummer too. And then Pam was just solid. They were just solid. They were a great little duo. And so that band was called Mainly Country, MAINE-LY, Mainly, Mainly Country, with a man called Jeff Simon. And Jeff Simon was kind of famous in our neck of the woods because he played on this show called Dick Stacy's, which was this local hometown show that was sort of in Brewer, Maine. And so I think Dick Stacy had this sort of showcase, and he'd bring all these people on and he'd play with them. And Jeff Simon got his start because he was on Dick Stacy, you know, that sort of thing.
Yep.
And he had a country band that he had going up until he died just a few years ago, a couple years ago now. And that band is the same band, but from when I was 19, and that had been going for years before that even.
Wow.
So Mainly Country, yep. And so that's where I met my first band. And my ex-husband, who was playing keyboard, his name was Dave, and then Roger and Pam and Jeff. So that was my very first band.
So how long did you do that for?
I think that was, I want to say it was about a year or two. And then, yeah, that's right. And then I think we had a falling out with Jeff a little bit, and then as bands do, you know. And my husband and I, after we ended up hooking up, the keyboard player and we ended up getting married, but we decided we wanted to have our own rock band, but sort of a mix that played everything that was like top 40 at the time.
Yeah.
But it wasn't as poppy as it is today, I guess. Like we played like, you know, Weezer or, you know, but still Journey.
So this would have been 90s?
90s, yeah. So I joined the band, I think, in 97. I want to say, the country band in 97. So I was just out of high school. I graduated in 95. I'm dating myself. 95, yeah. And born in 77, yeah.
Yeah,
77.
wow.
Yeah, and so joined the country band, and then we put together a rock band. And with Roger and Pam, of course, because they're solid. And Dave is an amazing keyboard player. His dad was a boogie-woogie piano player.
Oh, wow.
And he used to wheel his piano out into the street, like in his neighborhood, and all the neighbors would come. And then Dave, he sort of picked all that up, but he's
so music
also
was a very social thing. It was
huge.
like the whole community was involved.
Massive, yeah. And in Maine, I'd say country and your blues is really big, blues rock. So you'd hear a lot more of that on mainstream radio too. So we did do like Kenny Wayne Shepherd and Johnny Lang and Susan Tedeschi and stuff like that, as well as, Journey and Guns N' Roses and all your AC/DC, Eka-Deka, as you guys say, all that,
Yeah.
But then that was the time, it's really funny too, because I'm remembering back when we played in that band, it was like you did 3 fast songs and 1 slow song. And then you did 3 fast songs and a slow song.
That was the formula.
It was so people could slow dance.
Ah.
But now, actually when I moved to Vegas, that's a later story, that's when I realized that, we don't play slow songs anymore. It's just all fast songs. So,
Wow.
yeah, it was kind of crazy. But, so I digress. The rock band was called Muffy's Uncle. Yeah.
Muffy's uncle.
Yep. Because I had my best friend in high school at the time, one of them her nickname was Muffy. And when we were putting this rock band together, we thought, well, who are we going to get to play guitar? And someone said, well, Muffy's uncle plays. And my husband's like, oh, that's a good name for a band. And
Muffy's
we're
uncle.
Like, all right, that's it. So Muffy's uncle was the name. And then we ended up getting a guitar player. We tried out a couple people. And then we settled on Seth, that's his son, Stan Simonian, actually.
Okay.
And he was awesome. He's still awesome. And he loves his Paul Reed Smiths, and they just sounded amazing. And he sang as well. And so we traveled. We did that band about 5 years.
Wow.
All around Maine. The thing about Maine is you have to drive everywhere for like 3 hours. So every weekend, just get in the band van and head on the road, and then you'd get to the gig. You'd make $1,000 for the whole band, including your sound guy, back then.
Yeah.
And you'd split it all, 6 ways or whatever it was. Cause
Wow.
yeah, I still can't believe, the
But,
money.
yeah. The passion was there to go out and do it.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So it wasn't necessarily, you weren't doing it specifically for the money.
No. I mean, I think, when I started, I was 19, so
Yeah.
I couldn't even actually drink. I wasn't actually.
Because you have to be 21 in America.
I actually wasn't allowed in the bars that I was playing in.
Wow.
But nobody really knew that. Like they wouldn't. It just kind of. They thought I looked older anyway. So, and of course
Wow.
I did drink here and there because you do.
So yeah, I forgot.
Yeah, 21.
21 in America. Is it still
Yep,
21?
Still 21.
Wow.
Yep. So that was pretty funny. Actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. I still remember to this day. We had a fill-in keyboard player one day. His name was Greg, I think, and his wife came. And she was taking me out in the parking lot in the car to drink vodka and Crystal Light, which was like a diet lemonade. And she's like, come on. And I'm like, oh, I shouldn't be doing this, but whatever. Yeah, I should. So I went back and I'm drinking this with her. And she's like, I don't have any cups because she's drunk. And she found this old coffee cup, like a thermos thing. And she makes me a drink in it. But it still had like coffee in it, like old coffee. And I just remember having to try to drink that and being so disgusted. And I will say in a clean way, I tossed my cookies all night that night. I did, yep. It wasn't good, it wasn't pretty. So 19 years old, yeah. I blame it all on her coffee mug.
Yeah.
Doesn't go well with lemonade. No, not at all.
No, I can imagine. So obviously Maine's a state.
Yes, it is. Oh, for those that don't know.
Well, I mean, for those
Yes.
people in Australia, you're driving from town to town,
Yep.
doing gigs all throughout Maine.
Yep.
And you do that for like 5 years. So that's quite
yeah.
a stint.
More like 7 if you count the mainly country days.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
So what prompted you to leave Maine and was the next stop Vegas?
Yeah, I guess it was. Yeah. I mean, there a lot of stuff happened in between. I mean, I went to hairdressing school. Then I went to college for business management all in the time. I was doing...
So you did a lot of things.
There was a lot of things happening. My ex-husband was going to school for journalism and advertising. So he knew all about graphic design and all this stuff. And I eventually started working with him at this T-shirt factory, doing designs. And he taught me everything he knew on Illustrator and Photoshop. So that's how I learned graphic design.
Wow.
And so we did that on the side, but then my parents bought a hotel. We ended up running that for them as he went to college for his, advertising and whatnot. And we were doing the band on the weekends.
So you've developed a broad range of skills.
I am a Jill of all trades, so they say. Yes. Yep. Hotel caretaker, hairdresser. Yeah. Mechanic. I did automotives in high school. So, because my dad's
your dad was a mechanic.
So, yeah. So all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, my dad was a mechanic.
Oh, great. Yeah.
But I didn't really learn anything about mechanics. Didn't like getting my hands dirty.
Yeah, we had to save it for the guitar,
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, the turning point for us to move to Vegas was, I think we were running the hotel, and I just remembered one night I was watching TV, and I saw Sheryl Crow on TV, and she was playing and singing, and I just remember crying myself to sleep that night. I thought, I'm never getting out of this town.
Oh, wow.
I will never leave Maine. I was scared to fly. So I thought, there's no way I'm going to make it to California even. There's no way. How am I going to do this, right? And that's all I wanted. I wanted to play music like the right way, not just these shitty little 3-hour gigs making $100. It was like I wanted more, but I didn't know if I dared to do it. So we had the opportunity to go to San Francisco, to go and check out jobs, just to move, to get out of town. Because that was I finally was so upset about it. He's like, we're going to make this happen. And I thought, oh my gosh. And he was my rock. Yep. Like, he actually pushed me to do things I was so afraid to do. I was very introverted in that respect. So I thank him so much for that. And so we went to San Francisco and checked out some places. His brother lived out there, and checked out jobs and apartments and things, but it just didn't work out. And then on the way back from San Francisco, yes, I actually flew, and I think I probably had some drinks to make it there. we stopped in Las Vegas on the way back, I think it was, or maybe it was on the way too, it doesn't matter. But my parents had gone, and they were there with all their friends, and we had a heck of a time. We were gambling, and we actually, I went in on this bet at some high stakes slot machines with my parents and their friends, and we hit the jackpot, and I won $2,000.
Oh wow!
It was great because we split it all. So we had actual money to try to make something happen because we were pretty broke. After the San Francisco trip, we came back home to the hotel, and we decided, all right, well, we're going to leave. The hotel's being sold. We packed up everything. We sold pretty much everything we owned. We had the band van left in our car, and like musical equipment and just the odds and ends that every person has. And so we thought, all right, we're getting in the van, the car, whatever, and we're going to drive to San Francisco. We're going to go there. We'll just see if we can make it and make it in San Fran. So we drove, and we went through, it took us 4 days, I think. We hit like Memphis. We went to Graceland, just made a thing of it.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Yeah, so, and Albuquerque, I think, and Amarillo, like just going through Texas.
Was that Route 66?
No, we didn't do Route 66, but it was just the southern route otherwise. Yeah, I can't remember why we didn't. I think it's because it was slower. Yeah, so we just didn't do that. And we ended up approaching Las Vegas on Halloween night.
Oh, wow.
So we got into Las Vegas. I think it was Halloween, yeah. I'm pretty sure it was. It was either that or it was October 1st, but I think it was Halloween. And we got there. We got a hotel, at some cheap hotel. Every hotel's so cheap in Vegas anyway. Got there, and we're walking around, had some fun. We're like remembering the time that we had just spent with my parents and friends, and like, this place is cool. And we kind of looked at each other and went, we're not leaving. We should stay here in Las Vegas. And he's like, yeah. And we both went, yep, that's it.
Wow.
We're going to stay here. So we immediately just started looking for an apartment and jobs because we had nothing. We literally just drove there. And the luck would have it, within a week's time, I had secured myself the front desk clerk position at the Rio. And coincidentally, the hotel, the apartment we were looking at, which was almost right beside the Hard Rock Hotel and Casino, had a discount for the Rio employees for rent. It was like a 35% discount. So I ended up getting a job at the Rio and the apartment in like the same week. And
it was meant to be.
I was like, that's crazy. So then my ex-husband, he flew back to Maine to get the band van and all the other stuff and drive it back across. And that was sort of the end of that, I think, too, when he came back. Yeah, when he came back home to greet me at the apartment, our new apartment, I was like, oh, yeah, I wasn't that happy to see him. Yeah, I felt like it had been falling apart for us for a while. It was more like a brother to me, a friend, than someone intimate. And I didn't. He was older, and I don't know. Just the jokes weren't funny anymore, and we knew we were there to do something, but we ended up parting ways. About 6 months after that. That's what they say about Vegas too.
Oh.
If you're going to move to Vegas, don't have a rocky relationship because you will break up. Don't be addicted to anything like gambling or drugs or alcohol because it will take over.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if you have a relationship that's a little bit rocky, just don't move to Vegas because it will fall apart. And that's exactly what happened. And I think what pushed that was about 6 months later, because this is actually leading into the musicality of things, not just being a front desk clerk. At the Rio, they had something different in Las Vegas that no other casino had, and that was entertaining cocktail waitresses. And they called them bevertainers.
Bevertainers?
Yes. So Dick Foster Productions, who was massive in the 80s with like Ice Capades and all this other stuff, they put together this company that would supply the casino with entertainers that would either sing or dance and serve cocktails. And the other thing that we had at the Rio that no one else had was male cocktail waiters, I should say, because they also sang and danced. So sitting there at the front desk at the Rio, I would watch these cocktail waitresses and waiters, and I'm like, I could do that. I totally could do that. Oh my gosh, like serve drinks, sing up on this little stage. I could totally do that. I just have to audition. So I asked one of the girls as I was working one night, I'm like, how do I audition for that? She's like, oh, well, they're coming up in about, a couple weeks. You have to go here. I'm like, okay, I'm going to audition. So I did, and I got it. And I went, hallelujah, because if you're a cocktail waitress in Vegas, the money just flows.
Tips?
It is, yes.
Tips.
Or it did back then anyway.
Yeah.
And that was the bartending and cocktail waitressing is like highly, highly coveted positions in Vegas because you just make so much money.
Oh, wow.
Through the nose. Like your hourly rate is like nothing. You just don't even pay attention to that.
But it's all tips.
It's all tips. So that was the best. So I got that job, and that gave me a 5-year career at the Rio as a singing cocktail waitress.
Wow.
And how that worked was they had little stages set up throughout the whole casino. And every hour as a performer, we had to log in and sing one song each hour. So if you're there for 8 hours, eight songs, whatever.
Yeah.
And you could do more if you wanted to. But the thing is, like, you had to do it. It was part of the contract. If you didn't, you get in trouble, So some people would like wait and leave them until the end of the night. Then they just hit all the stages at once, and you're like, you can't do that. You're not supposed to do that, but we would. But the clientele, they loved it, because they'd see someone get up and do a 90-second number, or they would see them do a choreographed dance or something. So they had singers and dancers.
Yeah.
And it was quite interesting. So that job actually was quite a jumping off point for a lot of different positions that I was able to get in Vegas because of that job.
Oh, wow.
And the people that I met.
Yep.
So one of my managers, for instance, he loved me so much that he brought his husband in because he had a production company called Wild Room Entertainment or Wild Room Productions. And he ran a lot of shows in Vegas and all over the world, music videos, also, I think Disney on Ice or something. I think he's actually working for Sesame Street, I think, right now. I can't keep up with him. But he actually saw me and put me into some little shows. I was in a group called the Vamps Girly Review.
Okay.
So I got to join that, and he had little one-offs. Like there was one casino promotion we did for the Excalibur Casino. that was a bank of machines with this Harley Davidson, or a couple bikes, I think. But you could win the bike. And then we were the chopper Betties, because it was a chopper, a Harley chopper. And then we would get up and I'd sing like, Led Zeppelin, and the girls would dance around me, that sort of thing.
Oh, wow.
So that was one of the jobs that I got from it. And then also I ended up in bands and then another big production show. Just, oh my gosh, there's so
there was
much.
a lot of variety.
Yeah.
And good money.
Great money. So much so that I finally was able to let go of the cocktail waitressing after about the 5-year point. So there's just so much. My gosh, I think about it. Some of the girls, a lot of the people that entertained at the Rio, they were also in other shows and jobs. They were at Splash at the Riviera. They were in Fantasy at the Luxor. They were, dancers. They would leave their cocktail position and they'd go be in the show, whether it was a Cirque show or that, whatever it was. And that was one thing that actually was a really good thing for me. Now, I'm going to step back a little bit and tell everybody that I am not a trained musician at all. Okay, so I grew up in a small town in Maine. I learned from my dad. I sang around campfires. The minute amount of training was like from high school, like show choir or something. And we didn't really do that much, And so I can't read music. I tried, I attempted to do piano lessons, saxophone, but I got way too bored because I just wanted to play by ear. So I'd play things by ear, and then the teacher would be like, oh, you have to do this. And I'm like, yeah, no, I'm bored. I'm out. Yeah, so I gave up all that because I couldn't handle it. So I'm in a world in Vegas with people that have trained their entire lives. People that are so important. They've been in bands that are famous, and then now they're playing in the casino. It blows my mind the amount of talent that I was surrounded by. And, I'm just this little girl.
But the great thing is,
from Maine.
That's a great place to learn.
Oh my gosh. So that was exactly what I was getting to. That was my schooling. And one of the really big schools I got was, I got to say, from one of, a guy that came from the same town as me, Lincoln, Maine. Now, this is a really funny story. I think this is what sparked the idea of Las Vegas. When I was at the hotel one night, and this guy walks in, and I got his ID, and his name was Dave King. And I said, wow, Las Vegas, you live in Vegas? And he goes, yeah, but I'm from here. And I'm like, no way. And it goes, yeah, blah, blah. And long story short, my parents know his parents. I know his family. I know everybody he knows. Wow, that's so cool. He's like, well, if you ever come out to Vegas, look me up. And we can hang out. Sounds great. So we moved to Vegas, my Dave and I, and called up Dave King, and we're like, hey. And that was one of the guys that he said, hey, I can get you an audition for this band. But I got to tell you something right now. If you're going to do anything in Vegas, there's one massive thing you need to know. And I was like, what is that? He goes, your reputation. Don't be a diva. Learn your shit and show up and act like a professional. Don't be drunk. Don't let these things get away from you, and hold on to your reputation, because it will save you. If you ruin any of that, you're done.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. So Dave gave me my very first lesson. He got me this interview audition with a band called, it didn't have a name yet, but the guy producing it was Jason Tanzer, and he has Dust Tree Productions, which is in Vegas, and he was just starting out too. And he has a lot of bands that are, right now, you'd see them on Fremont Street, Carnival Court, all the main bars in Vegas, like Velvet Elvis, oh gosh, I can't even remember. He's got Mr. and Mrs. Smith. There's a lot of local Vegas bands that has. So he was putting together one for the Monte Carlo Casino. And that was going to be a house band for the bar called Diablos. And so we were going to be called the Diablos, apparently. So Dave's like, look, you can come and audition. And so I said, okay, cool, this is great. So I went in, and he's like, I'm going to tell you, just learn your shit. This is not a rehearsal. You're not there to learn anything. Just learn it. Make sure you know everything. And I'm like, yep, got it, on it. And don't be a diva. Okay, yeah, got it. So I walked in and met these amazing people. Mike Ellis, Doc Ellis, and Mario Basner, and AJ, and Dave King. He's a keyboard player. Anyway, went in to audition, and I heard other girls singing, and I'm like, it is a rock band. And so I'm listening to them. I'm like, oh, they're kind of singing it very musical theater. Like, I'm like, don't know. And okay, we'll see how they go. Hopefully I can do better than that. And I went in and I just had fun. I'm like, I'm just going to have fun with this. And I think we did Sweet Child of Mine and Don't Stop Believin', Journey, like the two major ones. And we had a blast. The band, we were smiling, we were laughing. And the guitar player's like, yeah, man, yeah, this is great. So I could tell they liked me. I'm like, okay, but that's not up to them. So shortly after I walked out of the room and they offered me a position for the band, I'm like, sweet. So this is great. So we ended up calling ourselves Aquarius. That was our producer's name for us because we didn't end up playing as at the house band at Diablo's. So we ended up house band at Mandalay Bay in what was then called the Mizuya Lounge, which is now called Rhythm and Riffs. Wow, I can't say that. Rhythm and Riffs Lounge. So we were there for about, I think it was 2 or 3 years. I feel like Wednesday, Thursday nights. And then we changed over some staff, had like Jason Walker was amazing. He's actually in Gene Simmons' band now.
Okay.
Like this is the caliber of people that I was so fortunate enough to work with. I mean, I think about like Corky, our drummer, was in the Blue Man Group.
Oh, wow.
He's a Blue Man Group person. And I'm like, wow, just, wow. One of the drummers we worked with used to be in Nine Inch Nails. These people just don't, they're not in small town Maine. So for me, I was going, wow, I gotta pick up my shit, and make sure I know what I'm doing and try to be as good as them. This is why you don't be a diva, because there's 10 other blonde chicks that are standing right behind me waiting for me to fall and fail and take my position. So I'm like, okay, be nice, show up, do your shit, and that they were my teachers. That's, they taught me everything, about being in a band. And I'd watch other bands. There was this one guy in Vegas who's absolutely incredible. His name's John Lombardo, and he is like the front man of frontmans. And I watched him and just studied him and went, I want to be like that. I need to be like that. Because he's just so funny. He's just one of those guys that just has an audience right in the palm of the hand the second they walk on stage. They don't even have to sing anything yet.
Yeah.
They haven't even played a song and he's got them. I'm like, how does he do that? So he was another one of my teachers, whether or not he knows it or not. And just having that experience has definitely made me who I am today, as far as what level of performance I give. That's definitely... the hard knock school, it had worked really, really well.
I guess the other great thing about being in Vegas is not only the opportunity to work with those people, but the chance to go out and watch them do their thing in other bands. So you get to see, because it's all so close and
incestuous.
Yeah,
is the word, really.
Yeah.
It really is, because in Vegas there tends to be a select number of people that make it as the musicians, not the big ones, but the musicians in Vegas, and they all intertwine. I was in probably 2 or 3 bands at one time.
Oh, wow.
Because I had Aquarius, but then we also went off and did Planet X with some of the similar players from other bands in that production company, and then I would host karaoke over here for the same similar producer I was working for there, and then you'd go host a birthday party.
So how many nights a week were you actually working, do you think?
About 5 or 6. Yeah.
How did you find that your voice held up?
I feel like I don't even know how, honestly. I mean, I remember having those days where I had to stop, not talk. I'm writing on notepads going, no, today's a non-talking day, vocal rest, and that was that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I probably did solid singing gigs 2 nights a week in the band. I remember at one time, I think Monday I had off. Tuesday I was at O'Shea's hosting karaoke. Wednesday, Thursday I was at Mandalay Bay. And Friday, I can't remember. I probably did something else. I think I was working cocktailing or something. I don't remember. But then I actually landed a gig, which was very scary for me. That really taught me a lot, that I had to really learn my shit fast, in a production show. And that was something I had never done before.
Oh, wow.
Okay, and one of the girls that I was cocktailing with, she was in the show called Fantasy at the Luxor. And it's a girly show. And you have an MC that sings and talks about, introduces a song, sings a little bit, dances with the girls, whatever, and then they do their burlesque thing. Well, one of the girls was a dancer in that show, and she said, Nikki, you'd be perfect. You got to come and audition to be Stephanie's swing, because Stephanie Jacobs Sanchez at the time was the star of the show. But she needed a break, like every now and then. And so I went in and auditioned, and I got it. And I was like, shit. Okay. Now,
did the role involve dancing and singing, or just singing?
Moving well, probably, and
Moving
blocking.
well.
Because I wasn't a dancer, per se.
Moving well.
Moving well. Yeah, you had to have rhythm and move well and block and be able to fit in with their choreography.
Okay, so there was some rehearsals involved.
Oh, 100%. Yes, yeah. I mean, it was to the point where you're here, 5 steps that way, here, then you go here, and then this and that happens, and you say this, and then you sing this, and then...
So it's like a proper...
Oh, it was a full-on production show. And then costume changes within 5 seconds, backstage, boom, 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 on, next number. Yeah, and then, so it was the first time I'd ever done that. And then for me, it was quite difficult too, because I just came from all these rock bands. I'm a rock singer. I've always been a rock singer. It's quite blokey, obviously. You can't get away from it. It's blokey, so you're like, yeah, and you're tough, but this is the first time I really had to try to be sexy. And not just in the cocktailing. Cocktailing forced me to be sexy a little bit so I could get better tips. but this was in an audience setting where I had to actually hold myself and really, kind of look the part as well. Instead of wearing my Harley Davidson boots, I had to wear heels and and really, assless chaps and a G-string and things like that. So because that was what the part.
And so that's the first time you've ever had to wear costuming like that?
Well, no, because the cocktailing waitress job was a G-string with a sarong over it. So that's Vegas for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that wasn't a problem. I mean, whatever. It was just more of to make sure that I'm holding myself like the girls did, because I'm
a much more feminine.
A more
type
feminine
role.
Energy I had to give off.
Yeah.
But Stephanie, she really liked me because she didn't really like too many girls, I gotta say, that would go in there because they would lose their voices a lot. But she liked me because I was a lounge singer. She's like, you're a lounge singer. You can sing it without losing your voice, every night. Because it's very drying. If you're not used to performing in a theater, you've got fog, you've got, the air conditioning in Vegas is horrendous. You got people smoking.
I guess it's without the air conditioning, it'd be
Oh
pretty
my
hot.
gosh. Yeah. And it is so dry in Vegas. It's a thing. They actually call it Vegas throat. It took me a good 6 months to actually get my voice back when I moved there.
Okay.
Because it's
Just
so
sucks
drying.
the moisture out of you.
It's the desert. So, yeah. But yeah, so that was it was a really interesting time for me. I was so fortunate to be able to do that show and to learn how a production show went and how to be an MC. That was the biggest thing for me. So I had to actually really talk to the audience, be funny, off the cuff, and sing and introduce girls and also at the same time remember to zip my costume properly so it doesn't fall off while I'm rushing, So that
there's a lot of you're like juggling a lot of things.
Yes, and remembering the lyrics or doing that, because we might have changed a song or whatever it was. So that was huge for me in learning experience.
How long did you do that show for?
I did it for a little over a year, and then they changed. We got Angelica Houston, and Stephanie ended up leaving. So they were doing this big thing in Vegas where they would get a headliner like Holly Madison, is that her name? Yeah, from Playboy, had gone over to Peep Show, and then they had like other big Mel B got in it and whatnot. So this was quite a bit of competition for Fantasy. So Fantasy realized, all right, we got to get a star on board as well. So they got Angelica Houston, who was on Baywatch, and I think she was also on the cover of Playboy and whatnot. So they brought her in, so she was going to be the new girl. And I did swing for her as well a couple times. I didn't want to do the show full time. That was not my desire.
So you were basically just like when they needed a night off.
Yep.
It was your job. Was it 7 nights a week in the theatre?
Yeah, it was 7 nights. Yep.
7 nights.
And I think I would get like a Sunday, Monday. I would do Sunday, Mondays, I think. Or just one, depending on what they needed. So I was pretty much there every weekend.
Yeah.
I think that was the days. I can't remember now. And then I went and played in Mandalay Bay with another band.
So when you say swing, you were basically like the backup.
Yeah,
person.
basically, yeah. So, because they couldn't do it 7 nights
7 nights a week, no.
So, except for Stephanie, who was insane when they first started the show, and she did like, I don't know, 300 shows straight or something. It was crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, when they first started, it was amazing. She had little marks on her side stage dressing area for every show she did. I was like, that is so cool.
Like the prison wall with it
It was so cool. So, yeah, so I did that, for a little over a year until Angelica came on. And then things switched up, and I think that's when I got a contract to go on a cruise ship.
Ah.
Yes.
So was that something that you pursued?
No.
It just came to you?
No, not at all. I was playing with my band, Planet X, and we were in Muckleshoot Casino in Seattle. I don't know, playing something because we got shipped around here and there. And Mark, my drummer, he's like, hey, we're going on a cruise ship. And they'd done this job before. They were called the Stingrays, and they'd done how many contracts? Like 27 contracts. He's like, yeah, we're going to go on the cruise ship. And I'm like, oh, that's going to suck. We're going to miss you, whatever. And he kind of asked me, he's like, would that be something you'd be interested in? And I'm like, oh, I don't know, probably not. And they'd already had a girl. So I was like, fine. But then we're in Muckleshoot, and this came at the perfect time, I swear, because after I had divorced my husband, when we first moved there, it was 2003, to give you the timeline, 2004, we'd gotten divorced. I was single for a little bit, and then I quickly got a boyfriend and was with him for 5 years or so. And we broke up, and I needed him out. I needed to get away from him, get him out of my house. He wouldn't leave, kind of a thing. So I'm like, well, if I leave, then he has to leave, right? So one night at Muckleshoot Casino, we're playing with our band, and Mark's like, hey, the chick that was supposed to sing for us just backed out. Are you interested? And I'm like, like, I don't know. Yes. Yeah. Okay. What is it? Tell me about it. So he's like 6-month contract, and it's the Mediterranean.
Oh, wow.
So we start 3 weeks in Miami and Mexico, and then we travel to the Med, and we spend 5 months there. So you're talking Portugal, Spain, Greece, Italy, Turkey, the whole shebang. And then we come back, and Croatia. Then we come back, and we hit Miami and Mexico again, and then we're home. So it started in May, ends in November. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. Then I can get him out of my house at the same time, So I took it, and I did that. And we talk about, you asked me before about how'd you sing every night, whatever. Wowee. It was one of the most brutal contracts. It was with Celebrity Century, which was like an subsidiary of Royal Caribbean. And we were the party band. That contract, I had 10 days off in 6 months.
Oh, wow.
10.
Wow.
So you want to talk about having to...
Was it financially worth?
I'd say probably not. Like, okay, I'll tell you, we made $700 US a week. You figure your room and board's paid for, all your meals are paid for, unless you went off the ship. But you get to see the Mediterranean for free. Our home port was Barcelona. We were in France. We were in,
Yeah.
So in that respect, like if you saved your money, $700 US, you would have been good. You wouldn't have to pay rent, no food, no bills really. So if you were smart about it, it would have been a decent, not great, but to be able to see the world for free.
Yeah.
That's where they get you. So I'm like, yeah, I'll do it. I don't even care. So, in that, so like I said, the 10 days off, we had to do the sailaways, which were, you had to play like a 1 hour set when we sailed out of the port. Then, and that was the first day of the cruise. And then we would do the showcase in the theater with the dancers and stuff. We'd do a little showcase of our band, couple songs. Hey, come and see us in this lounge at 9 o'clock, and we're here tonight. And then we go to the lounge and play for 4 hours.
Oh, wow.
So we did that on the first night of the cruise, and then pretty much every other night we were always doing the sailaways from the ports, or we were doing and we were doing the lounge every night.
Wow.
And then the poor boys, they had to go and play in the theater with the dance cast for some of the stuff. I'm like, man, these guys. So I at least got those nights off, but they actually had to play.
Wow.
In some of the shows, yeah. It was brutal.
Yeah.
But it was very much a love-hate relationship with that contract. Yeah, loving that you could see everything.
Yes.
And the band was great. Band was amazing. So
that would have helped.
We're all friends. I mean, we did start off with a dark cloud in the very beginning. We actually called him Dark Cloud Dan because he was the second guitar player, and he was just an Eeyore, you know. Oh, how much am I gonna have to spend if I leave the ship? Am I gonna, that sort of thing? And we're like, oh no, you're out. And then the band manager Mark's like, no, you're out, dude. You're messing up our vibe. So he's gone. And then we went on for a while until, my bass player decided to have relations with a passenger in the Crystal Lounge, and he got fired. And then we had to bring on somebody else to be the bass player, Donnie.
So was that a big thing too, I guess, as part of the contract, is no fraternization?
With the patrons, nope. The crew, you can go all day long, but no, you don't touch the passengers. Too many lawsuits where women have said, oh, that bartender harassed me, and they've gotten sued, and the cruise lines are like, no more. Because whether it was a lie or not, they were getting money out of the cruise lines.
Yeah.
So they said no more fraternizing with the patrons.
No fraternizing.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So that was a good contract. And then I will say, when I came back to Vegas after that, I took like 2 months off from singing. And I went to work as a cocktail waitress at Planet Hollywood.
Okay.
Yeah. I just wanted a different casino, different vibe. I could have gone back to the Rio, but I'm like, I've done that. And this didn't require me to perform. I could just serve drinks.
Yeah.
So I did that until the bands came knocking again. And there I was, and started up with that again.
Yeah, yeah. So at some point, you make the decision to move to Australia.
Yes.
How did that come about?
Well, this is a funny story. So I played at Mandalay Bay, like I said, a couple times with my own band, but then we ended up losing the contract there. But I joined another band, which were a few of the same players that were playing there with that man, John Lombardo I was talking about, who was the front man. So I joined them as a backup singer. And they played on 2 nights a week there. So I got to go back there to Mandalay Bay. And they had a great concept. It was amazing. It was, the band's called Vegas Limit, or The Limit. And their concept was no set list. All request.
Okay.
So they always would start with 3-4 songs to get the audience going. And they said, you're telling us what to play. And as very seasoned musicians in Vegas, you can imagine they know pretty much every song the audience is going to kind of throw at them, or at least a song from that artist.
Roadhouse Blues.
Yeah. AC/DC, Sweet Child of Mine. It's always the same songs anyway, so you don't have to go too far out of the box. So I thought, this is a great idea. And at the same time, I had joined a band through my producer, Jason Tanzer again, called Planet X, and we were playing upstairs at Mandalay Bay. We got a contract at the Irish pub called Reraw. And when we first started, we were doing pop and, all this mix of stuff to tracks and everything. And we were doing all the Black Eyed Peas and all this stuff. But then one night, somebody came up and said, can you play Kiss by Prince? And my guitar player is like, I know that. And we were like, well, we don't have a track for it, but we'll just play it, because we didn't really do that. We did tracks, and it was like nonstop music. And we thought, and we did it, and we had so much fun. And we're like, this is really cool. And I'm trying to remember if our manager was there that night, but I think he was kind of like, he kind of liked this idea, right? So we I don't even know how it formed, but we ended up becoming an all-request band up there. Upstairs. So we got rid of the tracks, got rid of it all. We started with a couple songs, and we said, all right, you guys are telling us what to play. And they did, with shots of Jameson and Guinness, because we're at an Irish bar. It's great. So very much solicited as well, because you're allowed to do that in Vegas. Soliciting tips and drinks, you're allowed, which is so different here. You know? I mean, every time I'm like, hey, don't forget to tip your bartenders and waitresses. They're working real hard for you. Or, hey, yeah, I'll play that song for $20. Or, hey, if you don't want me to play this song, pay me $20. It was great. Or just write your request on the back of a $20 bill, and we'll get it right on for you. That sort of thing.
Yeah.
So that's what it was. And so long story long, we're playing at Re-Raw in my band, Planet X, doing requests one night. I know we're playing some AC/DC. And these three gentlemen walked in. And I was like, one of them really caught my eye. I was like, okay. And the guys in the band were always like checking out chicks. And they're like, oh, hey, look at that one. Yeah. And this time I'm like, hey, look at this guy. And they're like, oh, I'm like, what? You guys do it all the time. And it's funny because the guitar player in that band, it was actually my roommate too, James Castleton. He's amazing. And so he's like, oh, great, And I'm like, who is this guy? And he's with this one, two other dudes, and they're all really dark. I was like, oh, they look like Armenian or something. I don't know. They're kind of like dark-haired skin. I'm like, very attractive because, I'm American, so we love our Mediterranean types, And so we're playing, and I see the one I had my eye on go to the bar, and there was this sort of cougar chick there, and they're talking. I'm like, nah, I got this. This is fine. I got this. And they were having fun. They were coming up and tipping us, having us play AC/DC because they're Australian. They turned out to be Australian.
Okay.
So I'm like, okay. So go to the bar on the break, and I'm like, the chick's here and the dude's here, and I'm like, hey, how you doing? Kind of thing. And then she quickly disappeared into nowhere, and I don't know where she went after that, but we started talking. I'm like, where are you from? He's like, Australia. I'm like, Austria? What? And Australia. And I'm like, oh. I'm like, really? You look like you're from Armenia or something. He's like, I'm Italian. I'm like, oh, okay. So that explained it. I'm like, oh, you're Italian, but you're Australian? Like, that's the weirdest mix I've ever heard of in my life. And I'm like, okay, cool. So he was really nice, very cute. And I was like, and single and not married and no kids. And I'm like, this is interesting. I mean, I was like 34 or something at the time, I think. And he was only 1 year older. And I'm like, wow, okay, this is very unusual to find somebody this age with like no real baggage, Mm-hmm. What do they say? You got to find somebody, with, as opposed to check-in luggage, someone with carry-on, when you're talking about baggage. And he kind of just had carry-on. So I'm like, oh, this is good. So we got to chatting and finished the night. And at the end, I'm like, how long are you here for? And he's like, oh, I'm here for just a couple nights. My sister's birthday. She lives in Reno. I'm like, oh, no way. And so it's her 40th. I'm like, wow, cool. So I'm like, well, here's my card. We did the cards back then. I'm like, give me a call while you're here. Maybe we can get together before you leave. I said, look, tomorrow night I'm playing downstairs in the Mizuya Lounge. Come and find me. I thought, if he's interested, he'll find me.
Yeah.
So I just gave him a quick little peck, and he kind of looked at me. He was like, whoa. And I'm like, oh, was I not supposed to do that? Thinking, because that's what we just do around our bandmate friends. You just give him a little, okay, nice to meet you, whatever. And he was kind of taken aback. And I'm like, oh, okay. He's like, all right. So he left, and then I was playing the next night, and I thought, oh, I don't know if I'll see this guy or not. Who cares? Whatever. And then at the end, here he comes walking through as I'm singing Led Zeppelin or something. I'm like, oh, it's him. I'm like, wow, he made it. And we ended up talking after the gig. I took him back to his hotel, not room, but hotel. And we just stayed there in like one of the lounges because everything is 24 hours. And we must have chatted for like until the sun came up and blah, 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 blah. And had a great old time, great chat. And he's like, well, let's go out to dinner tonight. I'm like, okay. He's like, my brothers and I are going to the Grand Canyon in like half an hour. They were booked on a tour. I'm like, how are you even going to manage? I'm like, and you want to go to dinner? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, okay. So they went on their tour. I went home, slept. And then when I woke up, okay, we can meet. I'm like, did you get any sleep at all? Somebody did. And then I met the boys and took them down to Fremont Street, which is a nice touristy area, picked them up. And we just had a blast. I was showing him bands, and I'm like really connecting with this guy. And I'd had a few duds in the single moments of my life. So I was thinking, wow, this is really unbelievable. So I had to get my roommate, James. I'm like, James, come and hang out and tell me what you think of this guy. You know, like, is he good or not?
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, he seems pretty cool. So hung out, and then they were leaving the next morning. And I thought, wow, I'm never going to see this guy again. Or am I? I don't know. He lives in Australia. He's pretty awesome. And so I thought, well, I'll hang out with you guys. I actually crashed in their hotel room, like with the boys, like that night, because we stayed out so late just drinking and partying and whatever. And the next morning, we're like, all right, we got to get to the airport and do all that stuff. But they wanted to go to the gun store first. So we ended up going there and shooting guns for a bit. And then I was going to take them to the airport. So that's what we did. Get to the airport, drop them off. Okay, see you later. Have a nice life, whatever. I went home. I'm like, wow, that was kind of cool. And then I get a phone call. Yeah, it's me. And my husband, Ramon.
Yeah.
Now, I've ruined the story. He is my husband now. My brother booked the wrong flight. It was actually yesterday. I'm like, what? So he's like, yeah. I'm like, oh my gosh. So I'm like, look, I'm going to come get you. You guys can come to my house and just hang out and figure out what you're going to do. So they did. I went and got him, brought him back to my house, and being the true Aussies, they wanted to represent. So they're like, we're going to make a barbecue for you. I'm like, okay. So I took them to the grocery store. They had a barbecue. They're figuring out, they got their flights. Those were gone. So they booked a Mustang that they were going to drive to San Francisco or something. And then they were from San Fran. They were going to Reno. So that's where she lived. The next day, we had a night at my house barbecuing. I had some friends come over, had a blast, and then I took them to the rental car place in the morning. They left, and we just kept talking, kept chatting, texting. Like, this guy's really cool, and like, wow. And so he said, well, I'm going to Reno next week. Do you want to come up? And I'm like, but it's your sister's birthday. Like, I don't know. And his mom was there too, right? From little Italian lady, right? I'm like thinking, oh gosh, this could be awkward. I'm like, you know what? I don't even care. Like, I don't know her. I don't know him. If it's fun, it's fun. And I'm like, as long as your sister thinks it's okay. If she's cool, then I'll go. And so he said, yeah, sister's fine. I'm like, okay, cool. So I flew up there and stayed with the boys in their hotel room again for a few nights. And we had a blast. And he said, hey, I'm going to Mexico next week, but everybody else is leaving and going back home. Do you want to come down to Cancun? And like, you get the rooms and I'll get the airfare is kind of the deal. And I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? I got, I'm flexible. I could take whatever time. And I'm like, yeah. So did that. Met him in Mexico. I'd never flown out of the country myself, ever.
So by this stage, is flying still an issue for you?
No, it wasn't. No, that had cleared itself up back in my probably early 20s.
Okay.
And there's a little story there, but might not be that interesting. But yes, I'll digress. My dad got his pilot's license at 55 or something, because he's like that, and took me in the plane. And once I figured out that it was okay and how everything worked, it just like all my fear left.
Oh, wow.
And I went, and I was in the plane with my dad. I'm like, if we go down, who cares? I'm with my dad.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is great. And all my fear left. So I was fine flying after that. Yeah. That was great, So yeah, flew to Cancun, spent a week, I was a couple nights there, 4 nights, I think. And then we came back to Vegas, and he was going home to Australia for good. And so I was thinking, wow, how's this going to work? Long distance relationships don't really work unless somebody moves, right? So I thought, all right, well, we'll see how it goes. And he left, and from the time he left, we either texted or emailed or called at least, we were calling at least an hour a day. We texted and emailed all throughout the day, every day for like a month, 2 months. And I'm like, I think I'm going to come out there, come visit, you know? And okay, so I got a tourist visa and all this stuff. And he's like, well, yeah, okay. Maybe you should come out on a fiance visa. That way you could stay longer. And I'm like, what? You know, I'm like, really? I'm like, okay. So like, whatever. If it doesn't work out, I'll just come home and we will just cancel the visa. Who cares, right? Like, we don't have to get married right away. I jumped on a plane. I think it was October again. Seems to be the thing. I sold all my stuff again. I'm a snake, the year of the snake. I like to shed my skin, apparently. Sold all my stuff and got on the plane after my visa was approved. And there was more visas, but it doesn't really matter. It's boring. And came here to Australia with no real knowing if it was going to work. I had 4 suitcases, my camera gear, and my guitar.
Wow.
And I thought, if it doesn't work, I'll just go back. I don't know, to nothing, because I had nothing. I sold everything, you know. So I thought, I'd just take a chance. And I'm still here. So it must have worked.
It must have worked.
So yeah, that was a really long story short, but long story long.
So I know that you do, amongst all your other skills, you do photography.
I do, yeah.
And you also did some work for magazines doing photo touching.
Oh, retouching, yes.
Retouching and
yes,
stuff.
yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty decent at photo retouching.
Is that something that you started doing from Australia while you were here, or was that something you were doing previously?
No, I think that started really in Vegas when I started doing the photography. Now, in 2007, a fellow cocktail waitress friend of mine started doing a photography class at Las Vegas Community College, or whatever it was, Community College of Southern Nevada, I think it was called. And I thought, oh, that's really cool. And it was only a few days a week. And I thought, I want to try that too, because I really like photography. So she kind of got me into it. After that, I did like 3 years of photography schools, like different classes. And then they showed you some editing, but I already knew Photoshop and stuff because I'd done all the graphic design with the t-shirt company back in early 2000s.
Yeah.
So I'd already knew all that stuff. So it made it really easy for me to do photo retouching because I already knew the insides and outs of Photoshop like really well. So I started shooting headshots in Vegas, dancer comp cards, promo cards, and I had a makeup artist who was a fellow cocktail waitress dancer friend of mine. She'd come over, do the makeup. She's got a massive business now called MOBB, Makeovers by Brandy in Vegas, and she does all these famous people, and she's insane, amazing. So she was my makeup artist and shot all these headshots, and that was what I would that's what allowed me to give up the cocktailing. So I was able to just kind of pick and choose the gigs after that. I would do fantasy a night, maybe some karaoke, maybe a photo shoot here and there, and, the bands. And
so you really had a very diverse amount of things that you were doing.
Yeah, so during the global financial crisis, everyone was struggling but me, I felt like, because everyone needed headshots for new jobs. And I'm like, I was so busy. I was like, oh my gosh. So it was a perfect job to be in at that time. So I learned photography then, started doing that, and then doing the retouching actually came together as well because I was doing a lot of band photos, band shoots for my producer, Jason Hanser, had all these concept bands, and he would always shoot everybody on white backgrounds and make me put them in these crazy, situations and scenarios. And I always was really detail oriented. I want it to look authentic. And so I try to really hone in those skills to make things look really good. And that's where that all kind of came from. So, and I've just always carried the photography up with me until probably just a few years ago.
Wow.
Until my cameras all kind of died and now I need new stuff. but I still do graphic design.
Well, I know that you did some photos for...
Oh, yeah. For
me?
Yeah, I've done photos for you. But yeah, getting back to the retouching, I did do some retouching for like the Maxim calendars and stuff like that. People would send me photographer Wayne Daniels, who I'm in a band now with. He's amazing. He's an incredible photographer. He's shot like Kim Kardashian and like all these people. Yeah, he's quite an interesting fellow. He might be a person to talk to because he had some. He had an original band here in Australia that was quite famous, I guess, for a while too. I don't know them very much though, because I'm not Australian. But yeah, so I did a lot of work for retouching, still do. I still work for a lady in, or a company in America, 1 day a week now.
Okay.
Called TGC Worldwide. And they do PR and marketing for all kinds of people, famous
So you're
people.
still doing very diverse range of stuff?
Yes.
Because now you're also working in a band called Dreams, doing the Stevie Nicks thing.
Stevie Nicks.
Yeah.
You know, my whole existence as a musician, like as I got older and I knew what I was doing, I always wanted to be Steven Tyler.
Oh, wow.
I said, I want to be the female version of like Steven Tyler mixed with Shakira. That was like my goal, right?
Okay.
I look at Steven Tyler and the way he had his rags and the way he wore what he wore and how he carried himself. I'm like, that's what I want to be. Well, now I think the universe screwed up a little bit because now I'm Stevie Nicks, not Steven Tyler. So I got the wrong Steve.
But she's a very iconic character too.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
And always been somebody that I've loved singing. I remember when The Dance came out in 1997,
Yeah.
MTV special. And I sat there in my living room with my like little tiny head mixer and like microphones, speakers, and I sat there in 97 and tried to mimic every syllable, every word, like when she was singing Silver Springs or Rhiannon. And we would do those songs in the bands at that time because in those versions, like
Yeah.
that slow intro to Rhiannon. And if you haven't heard it, look it up. It's great. Who knew, fast forwarding some odd years later, that I'd be kind of paying tribute to her and
Yeah.
almost being I don't know, I guess a tribute artist, I suppose.
Another thing that's quite important to you, and it shows massively when you're doing the show, is the costuming.
Yeah, that's Vegas' fault. That's the fault of Vegas. I couldn't help myself. Like when we started the show, I saw so many opportunities when we were on stage, and I'd followed Stevie to a point, but I think in studying her and the meaning of the songs and why she sang what she sang and how she did, and it sort of almost flowed naturally, like this channeling sort of happened, I swear. And it was like I would make a cape and I think, I should wear this kind of cape for this song. I think it would be really cool. Or I'll make a cape that looks like this to sing this song because it'll be different for the audience. That's, again, the Vegas thing. Like Lindsey Buckingham would be totally like disgusted with what I've probably done with all the amount of sequins that I've put in the show because he always used to make fun of Stevie, saying, oh, don't take your microphone off the stand. Oh, what are you, a Vegas singer? And so she always left her microphone on the stand.
Wow.
She never took it off because she didn't want to get made fun of again by Lindsay.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so
wow.
the amount of sequins and things that I've done, he'd probably be disgusted, but I can't. I'm like, screw you, Lindsay. Anyway, it doesn't
Well,
matter.
she's probably obviously said that to him anyway.
Exactly, right?
It's like,
Yeah, so, but
you're out of the band.
that's it.
Again.
No, come back. No, go away. No, come back. But yeah, I saw the opportunity, and because I'm a showman and because I got all that entertainment blood in me from my dad, I wanted to make it something extra special. And plus I've had all that experience with how Vegas shows ran and what the audience should expect and what they need to stay entertained. I kind of just took all that and just put it into the show. And coincidentally, when I talked about channeling before, I would make a cape, like a shawl, and then I would find out that Stevie had one exactly like that before I had made it. And I was like, oh my gosh, like the blue one, I wear this blue one. I made it because I saw this fabric and I thought, oh, I'll sing this. I'll use this for the Tom Petty song because that was off Belladonna and it's my Belladonna. I'll say it's like the Belladonna cape or something. I don't know, because blue, I don't know, just reminded me. And then I look and that's her Belladonna shawl. I never saw it before. I never even knew about it.
Wow.
And I ended up making it.
Yeah.
And like I made a red one too, which she coincidentally, she uses for Sarah, but I use it in Gypsy because I thought red is for gypsies. Like that, they always do these big, gaudy,
So
things.
how many costumes do you use for the show?
I'd say, I think I counted one time, and I think I do 15 costume changes.
For
2 sets.
30 songs?
Yeah, for 2 sets. So, and the sets are about an hour and then an hour 20. So, yeah, and luckily it's
There's a lot of changes.
A lot of changes, yeah. And plus, okay, toward the end of it, when we do Tusk, of course, now that's the whole marching band section, right?
Yes.
And Wayne had marching band hats, authentic ones from LA, when he did this photo shoot with these girls for Maxim or something ages ago. He had still these authentic, Kansas City marching band hats. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's perfect. I'll do a marching band thing. I can twirl baton because I twirled the baton when I was in 4th grade, and I still know. And I'll come out with a baton, right? And when I was in America last time, I ordered the plume from this band company because you can't get them here, like the proper plumes for the hats. Got these cool plumes, and I fixed up the hat, and so it matches my costumes. So I come out, and I'm twirling baton, and then I see, this is one of those weird things that happen, then I see the video, and I was reading a book too, where Stevie was twirling a baton because her mother used to teach baton twirling when she was little, and she learned how to twirl baton from her mother. I'm like, this is weird. Okay, I didn't plan that.
Yeah.
Like, I just started doing it in the show, and then come to find out, we've got the Tusk video from the LSU or whatever marching band, and Stevie's there with the twirl. I'm like, I didn't plan that. That just happened, again, organically.
Yeah.
It's just really, really cool.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I've just changed outfits. I go from all black to all white at one point, and then now I've incorporated these wings.
I'm amazed that you can do that many changes and make that all happen. Obviously, there's some tricks. It's like there's some tricks going on.
Oh, yeah.
Backstage.
Yeah, and it's quick. Like, learning how to do quick changes is a thing too from Vegas experience, because fantasy was tough. You only had maybe, that's where I learned it.
So that show.
Yeah, and then doing the Vamps Girly Review would have been another one. That was another little burlesque show that I was a part of, where I was the singer, and we did like little one-off shows around MGM Grand, whatever it was. And yeah, that taught me. Those shows taught you, like how to go off quickly. But you have to preset. You have to be so organized. Let me tell you what, so organized, for the point of, if you don't set your hat down in the right spot when you leave the stage, it's not going to be there when you come back to put back on.
Wow.
So you need to make sure.
So how much space backstage do you take up to set up?
It's not too bad. Like, I have a wardrobe rack about this big, and then like maybe a couple of spaces for hats, and I try to keep myself
Because I know
contained.
a lot of the stages that you'd have to work on, there wouldn't be a lot of space.
Oh, some of them have been shocking. Others have been amazing, but some have been absolutely shocking. So but I always make it work. I'm like, I could do this. We could do it. If I have to do it, we'll make it work.
Are the other guys in the band very giving of the space to you?
Pretty good. I mean, excuse me. I would say, like, it's difficult sometimes because, people have a few drinks or something, and then they forget it's there, and they're stepping, and then the hat falls over, and I'm like, oh, where's that? But that's just the way that happens sometimes when you're not given that much space. I mean, theaters are great because there's so much room. But then you play some pub somewhere that's not set up. They don't have a proper green room. I'm like changing in a corner but like Reg is so good. He's our production manager and plus our bass player. But he always tries to make sure he sets up some kind of area for me to change that the audience can't see if I have to do it side stage or something. Yeah. So it's always a challenge. Yeah. It's, but everyone is great. Like, they all put thought into their costumes too, so they all change as well, but not as much as me. Maybe just on the breaks. But that's the biggest compliment we get. And when I go out to the audience to talk to them, they're like, the outfit changes, the costume changes. My gosh, where did you get that? Where did you get this? And unfortunately, I have to make a lot of it myself. Yeah. My mom luckily showed me how to sew with a sewing machine. So that's not great. I'm not perfect by any means, but no one's going to see that when it's on stage. So it's like, so I make shawls and do my thing.
Out of all the things that you've done over the years, what would you say would be the biggest highlight? My
gosh. I mean, probably right now with the show I'm doing is
Yeah.
one of the biggest, because this show has given me the opportunity. I've been in a lot of bands where I've fronted every band pretty much I've ever been in, except for that one band that John Lombardo had fronted.
Excuse me.
That's all right. And this is the only time where it's actually been me. It's been like I get to be. I'm not subbing for someone else. Like I am in essence, not to sound in a cocky way or anything, but I am the star of the show because it's Stevie Nicks. It's about Stevie. And it's the first time I've ever really had that feeling of being able to, it's something that I can put my creative thoughts and everything into. Like I've written the script for the entire show, for what I say, because I've done so much research and tried to really think about like what she was feeling or why she wrote things. And I've written all these little bits for the show. So I've got so much invested that this is really to see it come together the way it has. And it wouldn't have come together like that if we didn't have the team of people that we have, because they're all amazing. I mean, I could go on and on for days about the people I work with and all the talents they have that have made it all possible for me to grow in that area. So it's a massive highlight. And just to see the joy and the memories that we're bringing back for people with the music, it's different than any other band. I mean, you were in the Fleetwood Mac cover band.
Yeah.
Did you see a difference with that music?
Yeah, it's one of the great things I enjoyed about doing that is people come to see the show specifically to see those songs and hear those songs and see their show. And that's a really enjoyable thing as a performer.
You've already won.
Yeah.
You don't have to win them over.
No, they're there. You're there to perform that stuff. They're there to see it.
Yep.
It's a symbiotic relationship that's it's a wonderful thing.
And that's what's so different and so special. So that's it has to be my number one highlight. I mean, aside from a lot of the cool gigs I've been able to do in Vegas, or, like I got to host karaoke for Wayne Gretzky's 50th birthday party. Like that was pretty cool. I've sang on Fremont Street. I've played with some amazing musicians, but even doing fantasy was such a highlight. But right now has been unbelievable. Like I'll tell you, I was almost ready to give it up.
Oh, wow.
Before Wayne had asked me to do Dreams, I've been doing Crush and the duos with you. I played with you a few times, and I don't know, I was getting tired. I've been doing this since I was 19. I know a lot of us have been doing it a long time. But, and I just kind of was losing my luster for it. I wasn't looking forward to it anymore.
Yeah.
It was getting really boring for me.
But I guess it's also one of those things too, because you've got a young son.
I do, and trading that.
And that would have changed the dynamic quite dramatically
100%.
For you.
If I didn't have that, if I didn't have my son, it would be different. I probably would have had that drive still, because I could have used my creative, flow to put more into my bands and my duos and things like that. And then that would have been a great creative outlet for me and gave me that motivation. But because I've got my son, geez, it's hard to trade, a night at the Grand for, watching a movie with my kid or playing a game with my kid. It's like, ooh, I don't know. He's pretty cool. I like that little guy. I think I want to spend the time with him. It's just a trade-off. And then there's the risk too, which traveling, being playing in a bar with people you don't know.
How did you find the difference between Australia and America?
As far as
gigs, the type of gigs, the type of the audiences that you play to, the distances involved in traveling?
Tips. Nobody tips here. That would be one of the biggest differences.
Okay.
As far as audiences go, I guess it depends on what kind of venue you're playing in, but I think an audience is kind of an audience, no matter where you are.
Yeah.
I think they're kind of similar, because I've had dud audiences in Vegas. I've had dud audiences here. I've had amazing ones there and amazing ones here. It just depends. And it depends on if you're in a theater.
Yeah.
People like to be quiet and entertain me.
I love theatre gigs.
and they're great, but they're not as vocal a lot of times in their pub. They're drinking, they're catching up with
it's a different energy.
friends. Different energy.
It's a different energy.
They're gonna dance. They're gonna,
Yeah.
So it just, I don't know if it's that much different. Maybe the accent's different. Yeah, that's about it. Yeah.
Thank you very, very much for spending some time with me today.
Oh, you're very
I
welcome.
hope that
Thank you for having
there was
me.
something. I love doing these things because I always learn something about people that I didn't know before.
Now, who's going to interview you?
Well, everyone keeps saying that.
I bet. I'm sure you got a few stories to tell. You're going to have to, I don't know, get one of us to swap seats one day. And
yeah, well, I'm sure at some point that'll happen.
Yeah, you're going to have to. It might be a season finale or something.
Thank you very much.
Oh,
Nikki.
thanks, Scott. I hope I haven't droned on too long.
We'll give you
Oh, it's been a pleasure.
See you later, everyone. See you on the next one.